What's up, Mother Foxers? Welcome back. Here we are again. I know the cliffhanger on the last video. Two people were anticipating. Can't wait for the rant. Well, there's really not going to be any rant. There's mostly confusion. It's basically what it is. Sorry if it's dark. I'm trying to turn the lights on because then it does weird things to the camera. But yeah. So let's start it off by saying this. All these aftermarket radios have a fuse in the back of them, which prevent pops before it gets damaged by any kind of surge or anything like that. So we'll get back to that in a minute. First of all, the rear view camera. All right. So I hooked that up, tested it out, everything worked. Then I buttoned everything up, put it in the dash, and then I was going to go take it for a ride. So I knew everything was okay. Speaker connections were good and all that. And yeah. So I put it in reverse to check the camera before I go, and it says no signal. I'm like, okay. So then I took it out of reverse, put it back in, no signal. Left it in there, left it in reverse, came back, shut the car off, came back, opened up the hatch to see what was going on, and then I see smoke. It's never good, right? So I'm pulling off my panels, and the wire that you hook up to the RCA, there's a red wire coming off it, and you got to hook to a positive wire, and then you hook that to the rear view, or the rear light, positive. That one wire melted. It just melted. And looking back on it, guys, I think I can tell you what the problem was. But here, take a look. Yeah, there you go. It's that wire. And this, when I grabbed this wire out of that, I was like, man, that seems chintzy. Seems really, it's almost like Jello. I was like, that's cheap wire, That's all the thought I gave to it. I tied the wires up, with a zip tie and everything. And then I think that's where the problem occurred. I think that wire was just too chintzy that when I zip tied the wire, it probably cut into it and it hit the side of the chassis. I can't tell now, it's melted, but it must have hit maybe the chassis and shorted out, I'm guessing. So the camera's done for. I got another one I'm putting in, by the way. This wire on this one seems a lot more stout, and it actually has a better way of connecting it than this one did. But then now back to the radio. So I unhook all that camera stuff and say, all right, let's take this for a drive. Took it for a drive. Everything was working great, and then all of a sudden my audio started clipping. Just started. I was like trying to shut stuff off, and then nothing. Had nothing. Then I smell this electrical smell. Electrical burnt smell is like, it's bad, man. It's kind of like gear oil. It stinks. It just stinks. So I pulled over. I'm looking for smoke. No smoke. And I'm thinking to myself, did this radio just blow up? Did it just get fried? Didn't make any sense to me, because there's a fuse in the back that should pop before anything like that occurs. But when I opened my door, I realized my dinger wasn't working. So I'm like, okay, it blew a fuse in a car. All right, so I drove home, before I put a new fuse in the car, unplugged the radio, pulled the radio out, unplugged it, put a fuse in, checked the fuse on the radio, it didn't blow. So now I'm confused. I'm like, if this radio burned up, that fuse should be blown. It should have prevented it, right? I'm lost, So I phoned Justin, told him about it, and he's like, you got a bad ground somewhere. I said, no, I don't. He goes, yeah, you do. I go, no, I don't. I just checked it. All the wiring in that car is taped up in the dash. By me, there's no exposed wire in that harness. So I follow the radio harness all the way back up to the main harness, and it is covered in tape. There's no exposed wire. It's not touching any metal, and my wire's not broken. This was a whole simple swap. The wiring harnesses were already in the car. I just had to connect the right wires to the right wires. So when I go to plug the radio back in after I switched the fuse in the car, it arced and popped the fuse in the radio. I'm like, okay, so I pull that fuse out, put another one in there, and every time I touch the power wire into that plug, it's arcing. I'm like, all right, something's not right here. Something's not right with this radio. And after checking all of my wires in my car, I knew there was nothing wrong with my wiring in the car. So I get the old radio, the old Pioneer, hook it up. It works just fine, except the left isn't working because, like I said, it was on its way out. So I'm like, okay, so now it really blew. All right, so I take the radio back, exchange it, and I said I'm confident enough to hook this new radio up because there's nothing wrong with my wiring. Hook it up, I got no left channel. Now I'm really scratching my head, going, wait a minute. The first new radio worked. All this stuff worked. But the left wasn't working well with the Pioneer, and now it's not working at all with the Pioneer or this Kenwood, the new one, you know. I'm like, dude, if that's not working on the left side, the only thing is the amp. The amp's got to be, the channel must be going out. It must be out on it. Sure enough, the amp blew that channel, and that channel must have been going out for a long time and finally went. Now, I don't know if there's any way you could backfeed power from the amp into the radio. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. It should have still popped that fuse and saved the radio. It's neither here nor there now. I have it hooked up in my car and it works fine. Something wasn't right with that radio if it did that. Now, the way I got my sub hooked up is that thing, like I said, had a single RCA, you know, because subs are monos. But the way that I've seen them, like that Pioneer, is if you hook an amp or a subwoofer up to it, it's got two plug-ins. My idea was hook a Y patch and put it into that, but I hooked them in the rear and adjusted my amp to where I wanted it, and it sounds pretty good. And I actually had a subscriber reach out to me, and we were talking a little bit. It turns out he was a mobile audio guy. So I said, hey, let me ask you a question. And I asked him a question about the subwoofer having that single plug-in. And I said, should I leave it in the rear or plug it in with a Y patch to the single? He was like, plug it into a Y patch. Now you can control the sub on the radio, because you can't control the sub on the radio if it's plugged in the rear like it is. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Get this new camera installed. And yeah, it was only $20, but it's like I said, it's better wire, it feels way better, and it's a better way of hooking it up. But there's the story, guys. Like I said, whatever it was, it had to be in that radio. That radio, the fuse, I don't know, am I wrong about that? The fuse is supposed to be the thing that saves the radio. It blows it if too much energy goes into it or whatever. And why it did that, I don't know. Because I hooked two other radios up to the same wiring in the car and it was fine. It's not really a rant. But this is what happened, man, I tell you. Oh, man. It was Memorial Weekend, and boy, did I have a barbecue. Jeez. I've been putting, since the first radio I put in a car, I remember this was 1993. So 30 years I've been putting radios in cars. I've never fried one. I never blew an amp. And of course, the first, backup camera I put in a vehicle, it fries. I don't blame myself. I kind of blame myself, but they shouldn't have used that kind of wiring. It was just chintzy. So, but I'm going to be careful with this new one. Besides, this stuff feels better. So yeah, not really a rant, but there you go, guys. You saw the end of the video where everything was working, and then I went for the drive, and that's when all hell broke loose. So the camera, the radio, oh man, but fortunately I was able to get another one, and it's working fine. So I wasn't, as far as anger, I wasn't angry about it. I was just really, really confused by it. None of that made any sense. So unless somebody else has an idea what happened, but that's what happened, man. Made no sense. So anyway, all right, there you go. I didn't have to drill any holes in there. This wire is going right inside the hole right there, so nobody's gonna see that. And this is the extra wire I got that I'm going to be very careful about zip tying up. You know what I mean? So we'll get this all tucked away in here and very lightly zip tie it. So, and then that'll be it, man. So there we go. Hey guys, there you go. There it is. Boom. And yeah, the camera has guidelines and so does the stereo. I just turned the stereo guidelines off. So yeah, it looks about what we need. I may turn that camera down a little bit, but other than that, there you go. No rant, guys. Sorry to disappoint, but that was more, like I said, it was more confusion than anything. So definitely something wrong with that radio. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Later.